Mike doused his wife with gasoline. Faced with his wife's pleas, he seemed unusually excited. Soon after, he pressed the lighter and lit the surrounding area. The flames spread quickly, enveloping both of them. But in the next second, his wife stood unharmed in front of him. Instead, the flames rushed toward Mike, engulfing him in an instant. Mike struggled to crawl out of the basement and eventually died at the door. A few days later, Alice, who was far away in England, learned of Mike's death. She hurried back home, but when she saw Mike's body, there was no emotion on her face, because Mike had abandoned her when she was a child, so she had no feelings for this father. Just as she was about to leave, a man stopped her. He claimed to be Mike's attorney in fact, and needed Alice to sign a heritage inheritance document. It turned out Mike had left her a bar. Later, Alice went to the bar. The place still had traces of the fire, and at the end of the hallway, there was also a wooden door leading to the basement. It seemed to hold unspeakable secrets inside. Soon, the lawyer took out an ancient property deed, then handed her a videotape, and claimed that once she signed her name, she would get this property. Since Alice was short on money, she didn't hesitate to sign her name. Little did she know that her action would bring her terrible consequences. Late that night, the sound of an alarm suddenly came from downstairs. Alice was woken up immediately. Right after that, another strange noise came. She realized someone had broken into the bar, so she turned on her phone's flashlight, trying to find the source of the sound. Before long, Alice went to the deep end of the hallway. She realized this was where the sound was coming from, so she pressed her ear against the door. Sure enough, she heard the alarm. Just then, a figure flashed behind Alice. She was so scared that she hurried back to the lobby. In the next second, a man suddenly stood in front of her. Before Alice could fight back, he quickly said he wasn't a bad guy, and claimed his name was Neil. He just wanted to see his wife. Alice couldn't understand what he meant. She just thought he was crazy. But Neil directly took out $2,000, claiming his wife was locked in the basement. As long as Alice could let him meet her, he was willing to pay more. Then he took out another $2,000. Neil could tell she didn't seem to understand, so he explained that he had originally come to find Mike. Mike had been running this kind of business before, and all the secrets were in the basement. It wasn't until then that Alice remembered the videotape the lawyer had given her, so she told Neil to come back the next day. After Neil left, Alice watched the video Mike had left. Only then did she learn the truth of the matter. It turned out that in the basement, there lived a mysterious witch. As long as she was given the deceased's personal belongings to eat, anyone, no matter how long dead, could be resurrected. Moreover, this witch would only obey the owner of the bar. However, the longer one communicated with the witch, the stronger the witch's power would become. In the end, even the owner's consciousness would be swallowed. So Mike emphasized in the video not to use the witch's power. But Alice was in desperate need of money, and Neil was willing to pay $4,000 just to talk to his late wife. So she ignored Mike's warning, and even called her friend Kate to help her. The next day, Neil arrived at the bar on time. At that moment, Alice took the bar keys and led him into the basement, but they found the place was very empty, except for 2 chairs and a black hole on the wall. There was nothing else there. At this time, Neil suggested that she call out, so Alice casually gave the command. Before long, a bloated hand stretched out of the black hole. A witch wearing a burlap sack over her head appeared in front of everyone. Kate felt a strong sense of fear and hurriedly told Alice to leave here. But Neil on the other side was very calm. He begged the witch to summon his deceased wife, but the witch ignored him. She walked straight toward Alice, until Alice said stop. The next moment, the witch finally stopped in her tracks. Then Alice told her to step back, and the witch did as she was told. Neil immediately became excited. He told Alice to order the witch to sit on the chair. Then he knelt down and begged the witch to let him see his deceased wife. Next, Neil took out his wife's ring and placed it in the witch's hand. But the witch picked up the ring and swallowed it in one bite. Neil thought the witch had gotten out of control, so he tied her to the chair. Just at that moment, the witch's hands gradually returned to normal. Neil couldn't believe what he was seeing. He slowly lifted the sack off her head, but instead of turning into his wife, the witch had turned into his mother. Neil finally remembered that this ring had once belonged to his mother. He immediately turned away, begging Alice to do it again. At this time, his mother recognized Neil's voice. She immediately burst into tears, feeling that she had let Neil down. Just then, a black liquid suddenly oozed out of the black hole on the wall. In the next second, his mother's expression became very strange. She started asking Neil for a kiss, and stretched her neck to an eerie length. Neil was so scared that he turned and ran, but the moment he looked back, his mother had disappeared from where she stood. Neil turned around again, only to be pinned to the ground by his mother. Then she spat a lot of dirty water at Neil, until Alice stopped her. Then Alice picked up the sack and put it back on the witch's head. Only then did the chaos finally subside. Alice ordered her to go back into the black hole. The witch was reluctant, but still went back. Later, Alice took the others out of the basement, but Neil refused to leave just like that. To see his deceased wife, he was willing to pay double the price. Although what happened today had scared Alice, she was even more scared of having no money. So the next day, she took Neil to the basement again. This time he took out his wife's necklace. Before long, Neil took off the witch's sack, and finally saw his deceased wife. but his wife was in a panic. She asked Neil where this place was, worried that if it took too long, the witch would get out of control. Neil directly asked his wife about the cause of the car accident. It wasn't until then that his wife realized she was dead. Her emotions collapsed instantly. Neil had to comfort her to calm down, but time was still passing. After a moment of hesitation, Neil decided to get straight to the point and began to question his wife if she had cheated on him. Neil's sudden question surprised his wife. She quickly explained that she hadn't betrayed Neil, but he didn't want to believe her at all. As the 2-minute countdown ended, his wife's face gradually changed. Alice quickly picked up the sack to stop all this, but in the next second, his wife suddenly drifted toward the black hole. Then the lights went out. When the lights came back on, his wife had disappeared. Alice turned around and saw her huddled in the corner. Just as Alice was about to put the sack over her, the witch suddenly turned around. To prevent Alice from giving commands, the witch covered Alice's mouth with her hand. Just as the situation was about to get out of control, Alice used ventriloquism to issue the stop command. Only then did the witch stand up and move away from her. After the witch went back into the black hole, Neil still wouldn't give up. He wanted to summon his wife once more. Kate, who was standing beside them, got angry. She didn't want Alice to take any more risks, so she told Neil to get out right away. After this incident, Alice sat alone at the bar drinking and began to think about what Mike had said. Just as she picked up a family photo and fell into thought, Alice fell into a strange dream. There she saw what had happened on the day her father died. It turned out Mike had been terminally ill at that time and wanted to see his wife one last time before he died. So he used the witch to resurrect his wife. After a short goodbye, Mike poured gasoline on his wife. Just then, the light bulb suddenly exploded. He quickly took out his lighter, but saw his wife's eerie eyes. Mike was so scared that he dropped the lighter. The flames quickly covered the basement, but his wife was not affected at all. Only Mike struggled in the fire and was finally burned to death. Alice learned the cause of her father's death, so she decided never to open the basement's wooden door again. At the same time, the photo frame beside Kate suddenly fell to the ground. She pulled out the photo from the broken pieces and found a name written on the back. Kate looked up information about this person online and also found the person's address. But just as she turned off the computer, the man in the photo suddenly appeared in front of her. Kate quickly picked up her cane to defend herself, but the man suddenly disappeared. Later, Kate told Alice the information. It turned out the person in the photo was the first owner of this bar, and the person standing next to him was actually the lawyer who had handled the heritage inheritance for Alice. And this photo was taken 100 years ago. Alice realized that she had fallen into a trap and needed to collect more information as soon as possible. She went to the basement and used the witch to resurrect her father. But the first thing Mike said when he saw Alice was telling her to leave quickly, because he had never intended to let Alice inherit the bar. Mike told Alice, as long as her name was still on the property deed, she would never be able to get rid of the witch. At the same time, Kate was also worried that the witch would harm Alice. She decided to go to the first owner's house to find a way to break the curse. When she returned to the bar with the information, Alice was nowhere to be found. She thought Alice was still in the basement, so she went there immediately, but only the witch was waiting for her. Kate was so scared she dropped all the info in her hands. The witch ate some of the information. In the next second, she turned into Otto, the first owner of the bar. Kate realized this was a chance, so she asked Otto about the witch's information. It turned out that 400 years ago, a brotherhood had discovered this woman who could resurrect the dead. They had wanted to abuse the woman's power, but were rejected by her. So the brotherhood burned her to death, calling her a witch. But not long after, the woman was resurrected again. Then she began to take revenge on the brotherhood. To seal the woman, the brotherhood held a dark ritual and imprisoned her in an underground tomb. But hundreds of years later, their descendants dug up the woman again and used her power to make money. And these descendants of the brotherhood fell into a curse that lasted for 100 years. Just as Otto was explaining to Kate, 2 minutes had passed. When Kate realized it was already too late. A few hours later, Alice heard the phone ring. She hurried to answer it, but all she heard was Kate's cry for help. Kate said she was in the basement and needed Alice to come rescue her as soon as possible. So Alice rushed to the basement, but realized Kate's voice was coming from deep inside the hole. She knew this might be a trap set by the witch, but to save Kate, she still went in. Alice followed Kate's voice and finally found her deep inside the black hole. However, just as Alice was leading her back, a corpse around the corner caught Alice's attention. When she saw what the corpse looked like, she immediately panicked. It turned out to be Kate's body. Alice cursed the witch angrily, but the only response she got was a terrifying monster. Alice was so scared that she ran away quickly, but happened to run into Neil, who was looking for her. So the two of them left the basement at once. To help Alice calm down, Neil got her some sedatives and told her to take them. But when she woke up again, it was already late at night. She realized Neil had given her sleeping pills, so she hurried to the basement. At that moment, Neil was negotiating with the witch. He signed his name on the property deed and asked the witch to turn into his wife and never changed back. The witch soon turned into his wife, but the first thing she said was to blame Neil. It turned out that on the night she died in the car accident, she had drunk the water Neil gave her. which contained sleeping pills. It wasn't until then that Neil finally understood everything. It turned out, he himself was the one who caused his wife's death. Just as Neil was drowning in guilt, his wife started urging Neil to kill Alice. It turned out the property deed could only have one owner, and Alice, who was hiding nearby, had already been discovered by her. Seeing this, Neil immediately chased after Alice. She ran to the roof in a hurry, but was still caught by Neil. In the end, he pushed her off the roof. Later, Neil took her phone to the witch. He hoped the witch would turn into Alice, and then transfer the property deed to him. But when the witch turned into Alice, the first thing she wanted to do was take revenge on Neil, because after the witch turned into Alice, she became her own master, and no longer had to obey anyone's orders. Then Alice killed Neil, and walked out of the basement slowly. At that moment, a sudden fire quickly spread across the entire bar. Alice had avenged herself, and the witch had also regained her freedom.